It seems to me that looking back over the Bible, looking back over the history of the church, there is at the very least confusion and probably at best a great deal of uncertainty about what the position of the church has been with respect to people getting married. If you go through the Bible, you find no reference, that I can find at any rate, to a priest or a religious authority performing a marriage ceremony. People obviously did get married, but it's not clear who authorized or solemnized those marriages. We don't have any specific references to gay people getting married, but we don't have any references to priests being presiders at the ceremony of heterosexual couples. One of the great ironies is that as we separated church and state, we nevertheless allowed religious personages, priests, ordained ministers, rabbis, and so forth, to act as agents of the state in determining who will be married and who will not. And at that point, the priest or the rabbi or the minister became, in effect, an arm of the government. And what's gotten us into a lot of confusion, I think, today is that now civil organizations, civil entities like the state of Connecticut, the state of Massachusetts, most of the New England states, now regard marriage as a civil contract, and they have extended the right of that civil contract to gay and lesbian couples. So we find ourselves in the awkward position, at least in the Episcopal Church, of having a state like the state of Connecticut authorizing a gay marriage and yet not yet allowing the priests who act as agents of the state to perform at those weddings. Well, it's mainly, I think, a question of justice. As an historian of religion, I look for evidence, I look for factual detail, and as I studied the material, I discovered, to my own satisfaction at any rate, that there were no overriding biblical objections to gay marriage, there were no overriding theological objections, and that therefore, as a matter of justice, when there are no reasons to the contrary, that it makes sense for the church to embrace relationships that meet all the tests that the church has laid down as tests of fidelity. That is, the couple must be faithful to each other, they must show mutual affection to each other, they must be committed to the welfare of each other, and if those are met, doesn't matter what sex or gender the person is, if those are met, then the relationship has met the test that the Bible sets out for people in relationship to each other. I think it is difficult because what we are asking the Bishop of the Diocese of Connecticut to do is allow, under the context of the generous provision, which was a resolution passed at the last General Convention, to permit priests to solemnize or authorize or officiate at gay marriages. The difficulty is going to be that the bishop is very heavily involved in the Anglican Communion, and he may find it difficult to accept this, but I would argue that it should go forward on two grounds. The first is that the state of Connecticut is now a civil authority that recognizes gay marriage. And if the clergy in the Episcopal Church are to act as agents of the state, they should in fact act as agents of the state because the state has already accepted gay marriage. The second argument is more theological. It says that we have no theology that would oppose gay marriages, and that while it would be a courageous act on the part of the bishop, while it would put him out in front of many of the other dioceses in the country, he would not be alone. And it would be a prophetic act that while it may break certain, or at least challenge or cause tension with certain present canons of the Episcopal Church, might actually move the church closer to what I think is the just position. It reminds me of the difficulties that were faced by priests and clergy in the years leading up to the American Civil War, or even for that matter in the more recent civil rights struggles in the 1950s and 60s. Sometimes people had to break the law in order to bring the failure of the law to exposure, to show the rest of the world that those laws were no longer just. And this may be one of those examples where by allowing this kind of action on the part of priests, the Episcopal Church in the Diocese of Connecticut is showing that it is willing to take a step toward justice, even if it's moving ahead of the church generally.